from trade to territory. Aurangzeb was the last of the powerful Mughal ruler. He established a control over a large part of a territory that is now known as India. After his death, 1707, many Mughals governors and big zamindar began arresting their authority and establishing religion kingdom as powerful religion. Kingdom emerged in various parts of India. Delhi could no longer function as an effective center. By the second half of the 18th century, however, a new power was emerging on the political horizon. The British. Did you know that the British originally came as a small trading company and were looking to acquire territories? How then did they come to be a master of a West Empire? In this chapter, you will see how this came about. East India Company comes east. In 16th century, the East India Company acquired a character from the ruler of England, Queen Elizabeth I, granting it the sole right to be trade with the East. This meant that no other trading group in England could compete in the East India Company. In this charter, the company could venture across the ocean looking a new land for which it could buy goods at a cheap price and carry them back to Europe to sell at higher prices. The company did not have to fear competition from the other English trading companies. Mercantile trading companies in those days made profits primarily by excluding competition, so then they could buy cheap and sell dear. The Royal Charter, however, could not prevent other European power from entering the eastern market. By the time the first English ships sailed down the west coast of Africa, round the Cape and Good Hope, and crossed the Indian Ocean, the Portuguese had already established their presence in western coast of India and had their base in Goa. In fact, it has Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer who had discovered the sea route of India in 1498 by early 17th century. In the Dutch too were exploring possibilities to trade Indian Ocean. Soon the French trader arrived to own the scene. The problem was that all the companies were interested in buying the same thing. The fine quantities of cotton and silk produced in India had a big market in Europe. Pepper, cloves, cardamom and cinnamon. Two European companies were in greater demand. Competition was the European company inevitably push up to the prices at which these goods could be purchased, and this reduced the profit that could be earned. The only way and trading companies could flourish way by eliminating rival competitor. The urge secure market therefore led to fierce battles between a trading company throughout the 17th and 18th century. They regularly sank into the other ship, blockaded routes, and prevented rivals' ship from moving the supplies of goods. Trade was a carry on with arms, and trading posts were protected through fortification. This effort to fortify settlement and carry on profitable Trade also led to intense conflict with local rulers. The company therefore found it difficult to separate trade from politics. Let us see how this happened. East India Company being trade in Bengal. The first English factory was set up on the banks of River Hugli in 1651. This was the base from which company trader know at the time of factory operating. The factory had a warehouse where goods for export were stored, and it had office where company officials sat. As the trade expanded, the company persuaded merchant and trader to come and settle near the factory by 1696. It began building a fort around the settlement. 2 years later, the prevailed Mughal official into giving the company zamindari rights over 3 villages on these and was Kalikata, which later grew into the city of Calcutta to Kolkata as it known today. It also persuaded the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb to issue a farman granting the company the right to the trade duty free. The company tried continuously to express for more concession for manipulate existing privileges. Aurangzeb Farman for instance has granted only the company the right to trade duty free. The official of the company who were carrying private trade to the side were expected to pay duty. These they refused to pay, causing an enormous loss of revenue for Bengal. How could Nawab Bengal Murshid Quli Khan not protest? How trade led to battle. Through the early 18th century of conflict between the company and the Nawabs, Bengal intensified after the death of Aurangzeb. The Bengal Nawabs arrested their power and autonomy as the religion power were doing at that time. Murshid Quli Khan was followed by Ali Wardi Khan and then Sirajuddaulah as the Nawab of Bengal. Each one of them was strong ruler. They refused to grant the company concession, demand large tributes for the company rights to trade, deny it any right to mint coin, and stop it for extending its fortification, accusing the company of deceit it. They claim that the company was depriving the Bengal government of huge amount of revenue and undermining the authority of the Nawab. It was refusing to pay taxes, writing disrespectful letter and trying to humiliate the Nawab and his official. The company on its part declared that the unjust demand of local officials were running the large trade of the company. The trade could flourish only the duties were removed. It was also convenient to expand the trade right to enlarge settlement by the villagers and rebuild its fort. The conflict in the fortification and finally under the famous Battle of Plassey. The Battle of Plassey. When Ali Wardi Khan died in 1756, Sirajuddaulah bin the Nawab of Bengal, the company was worried about his power and keep on a puppet ruler who would willingly give trade concession and other privileges. So it tried through without success to help one of Sirajuddaullah's rival become a Nawab. Infuriated, Sirajuddaulah asked the company to stop meddling in political affairs of the dominion, stop fortification and pay revenue and no negotiation failed, the Nawab marched with 30,000 soldiers to the English factory of Qasim Bazar, captured company official, locked warehouses, armed English or blockade English ship, then marched Calcutta to establish control over the company fort there. On hearing the news of the fall of Calcutta Company official, Madras sends under the command Robert Clive reinforced in naval fleet. Prolonged negotiation with the Nawab followed. Finally, in 1757, Robert Clive led the company army against Rajudollah at Plassey. On the main source reason for the defeat of Nawab was that the force led by Mir Jafar, one of the Sirajudollah commander, never fought in the battle. Clive had managed to secure support for promising to make the Nawab, and after crushing Sirajudollah, the Battle of Plassey became famous because it was the major victory for the company won in India. After the defeat at Plassey, Sirajudollah was assassinated and Mir Jafar made the Nawab. The company was still unwilling to make over the responsibility of administration of its time. Objective was the expansion of a trade. If this would come done without conquest through the help of local rulers who were willing grant privileges, then territories need to be taken over directly. Soon the company discovered that this was rather difficult, for even the puppet Nawabs were not always helpful as the company wanted them to. After all, they had to maintain a basic appearance of dignity and sovereignty if they wanted respect from their subject. What could the company do? When Mir Jafar protested, the company deposed him. They installed Mir Qasim in place. In Mir Qasim complained, he in turn defeated battle fought at Buxar, driving out the Bengali. Mir Jafar reinstalled. The Nawab had to pay 5 lakh rupee every month, but the company wanted more money to enhance its war, but meet the demand of trade and its other expenses. It wanted more territories and more revenue to the company. Mir Jafar died in 1765. The mood of company had changed, having failed the work puppet Nawabs. Clive declared, we just must indeed become Nawabs ourselves. Finally, in 1765, the Mughal emperor appointed the company in Diwan province of Bengal. The Diwani allow the company use the vast revenue of Bengal. This solved a major problem that the company had earlier faced from the early 18th century. Its trade with India had expanded, but it had to buy most of the goods in India. The gold and silver imported from Britain. This is because the time Britain had no goods to sell India. The outflow of gold from Britain slowing the battle. Plassey had entirely stopped the assumption of Diwani. Now revenues from India called finance company expenses. These revenue could be used to purchase cotton and silk textile in India, maintain company troops, and meet the cost building the company for official at Calcutta. Company official become Nawabs. What did it mean to be Nawabs? The meant of course the company acquire the power of authority then, but it also meant that something each a company servant began to have a vision liking Nawabs. After the Battle of Plassey, the actual Nawab of Bengal were forced to give land vast sums of money as personal gifts to company official. Robert Clive himself amassed a fortune in India. He had come to Madras from England in 1743 at the age of 18, when in 1765 he left India fortune was worth 4 lakh euros. Interestingly, when he was appointed Governor General in 1764, he asked to remove corruption in company administration, but he was himself cross-examined in 1772 by the British Parliament, which is suspicious of the vast wealth thought he was acquitted. He committed suicide in 1774. However, note the company officials succeeded in the making money like Clive. Many died an early death in India due to these and war and would want rights regard all of them corrupt and dishonest. Many of them came from humble background and their uppermost desire was in India. Return to Britain led to comfortable life. Those who managed to return with wealthy led flashy lives and flaunted their riches. They were called nabobs and Anglicide's version of India world Nawab. They were often seen as upstart and social climber in British society and were ridiculed or made fun in the place of and cartoon. We can analyze the process of extension of India states by the East India Company from 1757 to 1857. Certain key aspects emerged. The company rarely launched a direct military attack on an unknown territory. Instead, a use of variety political, economic, and diplomatic method of extended influence before exercising an Indian kingdom. After a battle of Buxar, 1764, the company appointed a resident in Indian state. They were political or commercial agent, and their job was to serve and further the interest of the company through the resident. The company official being interfering in the internal affair of Indian states. They tried to decide who was the successor of throne and who was to be appointed and reports. Sometimes the company forced the state into a subsidiary alliance according to the terms of the alliance. India rulers were not allowed to have their independent force. They were to be protected by the company but had to pay the subsidiary force that the company was supposed to maintain. For the purpose of this protection, if Indian ruler failed make to payment when part of a territory was taken away for penalty. For example, when Richard Wallace was Governor General in 1798 to 1805, the Nawab of Awadh was forced to give over half of territory to a company in 1801. As they failed to pay subsidiary forces, Hyderabad was also forced to cede territory to similar grounds. Tipu Sultan, the Tiger of Mysore. The company resorted the direct military confrontation when it saw a threat to its political economic interest. This can be illustrated with the case of southern Indian state of Mysore. Mysore had grown in strength under the leadership of the powerful ruler like Hyder Ali ruled from 1761 to 1792 and his famous son Tipu Sultan ruled from 1782 to 1799. Mysore controlled the profitable trade of the Malabar coast where the company purchased pepper and cardamom. In 1785, Tipu Sultan stopped the export sandalwood, pepper, cardamom through the port of his kingdom and disallowed local merchants from trading with the company. Also established a close relation between French between the French if India modernized his army with their help. The British were furious. They saw Haidar and Tipu ambitious, arrogant, and dangerous ruler who had to be controlled, had crushed for war, were fought with Mysore only in the last. The Battle of Seringapatnam did the company ultimately win a victory. Tipu Sultan was killed defending the capital Seringapatnam. Mysore was placed under the form of ruling dynasty of the Vodayans, and Subisdari alliance was imposed on the state. War with Maharashtra's. War with Marathas. From the late 18th century, the company also sought the curb eventually destroy Maratha power with their defeat of their third battle of Panipat in 1761. The Marathas' dream ruling from Delhi was shattered. They were divided into many states under different chiefs belonging to the dynasty, such as Sindhia, Holkar, Gaikwad, and Bhonsle. These chiefs were band together confidentially. The Peshwa, who became an effective military and administrative head, based Pune Mahadajili, Sindhia, and Nana Pandis were two famous Maratha soldiers and statesmen of the late 18th century. The Maratha were subdued in the Serious War. In the first war that ended in 1782, the Treaty of Salbai, there was no clear victor. The second Anglo-Maratha War was fought on different fronts, resulting in the British gaining Orissa and the territories north of the Yamuna River, including Agra and Delhi. Finally, third Anglo-Maratha War of 1817 to 19 crushed Maratha power of Peshwa was removed and sent the Bitur near Kanpur with a pension. The company now had complete control over the territory south of Vindhyas. The claim to paramountcy. It is clear from the above stats from the early 19th century. The company pursued aggressive policy of territory expansion under Lord Hastings, Governor General 1813 to 1823. The policy of paramountcy was initial. Now the company claimed that its authority was paramount or supreme, hence its power of greater than that the greater states it order protect interest. It was justified in annexing the threatening to annex the Indian kingdom to continue to guide later British policies as well. The process, however, did not go unchallenged. For example, when the British tried to annex the small state of Kittur, Rani Channamma took to arms and led to anti-British resistance movement. She was arrested in 1824 and died to a prison in 1829. But Rayana, a poor chowkidar and of Sangoli in Kittur, carried on the resistance with popular support, has destroyed many British camps and record he was handled by the British in 1830. You will read more about several cases resistance later in the book. In the late 1830s, the East India Company became worried about the Russia, imagined that Russia might expand across Asia and enter India from the northwest. Driven by this fear, the British now wanted to secure their control over the northwest. They fought the prolonged war with Afghanistan between 1838 and 1842 and established indirectly company rule there. Next line was Punjab, but the Princess Maharaja Ranjit Singh held back to accompany. After her death, 1839 prolonged war were fought in the Sikh kingdom. Ultimately, in 1849, Punjab was annexed. The doctrine of lapse. The final wave of annexation occurred under the Lord Dalhousie, who was the Governor General from 1848 to 1856. He devised a policy that came to be known as the doctrine of lapse. The doctrine declared that an Indian ruler died without a male there, his kingdom without vowed lapse, that is become part of a company territory. One kingdom after another was annexed simply by applying this doctrine. Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur and Jhansi. Finally, in 1856, the company took Awadh. This time, the British had added argument. They say they were obliged by duty to take over Awadh to order to free people in misgovernment of Nawab in grade humiliating way in which the Nawab deposed people. Awadh joined the great revolt that broke out in 1857, setting up a new administration. Warren Hastings, Governor General from 1773 to 1785, was one of the many important figure who play a significant role of expansion of company power. By his time, the company had acquired power not only in Bengal but also in Bombay and Madras. British territories were broadly divided into administration units called presidencies. There were 3 presidencies: Bengal, Madras and Bombay. Each were ruled by a governor. The supreme head of administration was the Governor General. Warren Hastings, the first Governor General, introduced several administrative reforms, notably in the sphere of justice. From 1772, a new system of justice was established. Each district was to have 2 courts, a criminal court and civil court, and Maulvis and Hindu Pandits interpreted Indian law. For the European district collector and presides over civil court. The criminal court still under the Qazi and Mufti, but the supervision of the collector. A major problem that was a Brahman Pandit gave the different interpretation at local law based on different school of the Dharmashastra to bring about uniformly. In 1775, even Pandit were asked to compile the digest of Hindu law and behold translate his digest into English. By 1778, a code of Muslim law was also compiled. The benefit European judge under the Regulating Act of 1773. A Supreme Court was established, while the Court Appeal, a Sadar Nizamat Adalat, was also set up in Calcutta. The principal figure in an India district was the collector, as the title suggests. His main job was to collect revenue taxes, maintain the law order his district with the help of judge, police officer and darogas. His office, the collectorate, became the new center of power. Patronage steady replaced previous holder of authority. The company army. Colonial rule in India brought in some ideas of administration and reform, but its power rested on its military strength. The Mughal army mainly composed the cavalry, sawar, trained soldier on horseback, in infantry, that is a Paidal soldier. They were given in training archery and the use of sword of cavalry dominated in the army. The Mughal state did not feel need to have a large professionally trained infantry. The rural areas had a large number of armed peasant. Local zamindar often supplies Mughal with a Paidal soldier. A change occurred in the 18th century when Mughal successor state like Awadh and Banaras started recruiting peasant into their armies and training them a professional soldier. In the East India Company adopted some method, then it began to requirement for its own army. When came we know as a Sepoy army for, from the Indian word Sipahi meaning soldier. The warfare technology changed in from the 1820 the cavalry requirement of the company army declined. This is because the British Empire is fighting in Burma, Afghanistan and Egypt where soldiers were armed with muskets and matchlocks. The soldier of the company army had to keep to pace with changing military requirement and its infantry regiment now became more important in the early 19th century. The British began to develop uniform military culture. Soldiers were increasingly subjected to European style training, drill and discipline was regulated their life for more than become often is created problems is caste and community feeling were ignored in building a force of professional soldiers could not individual so easily. Give up their caste and religious feeling could they see themselves only as soldiers not as a member of communities. Where did the sepoys feel? How did they react to the changes of their lives and their identity? That is their sense of who they were. Revolt of the 1857 gives us a glimpse into a world of the sepoy. You will read about the revolt in chapter 5. Conclusion. Thus the East India Company was transformed from a trading company to a real company power. The arrival of a new steam technology in the early 19th century also aided this process. Till then it would take a century, also added anywhere between 6 and 8 months to travel to India by sea. Steamship reduced the journey time to 3 weeks, enabling more Britishers and their families to come to a far off country like India. By 1857, the company came to exercise directly rule over about 63% of territory and 78% of the population of the Indian subcontinent. Combined with its indirect influence of the remaining territorial population of country, the East India Company had virtually the whole of India under its control. This chapter will done.